Welcome to this video, new part of the Middlegame Strategy series. In this game we're going to look at a very typical type of sacrifice that happens time and time and again in various openings, structures. It's hard to put a certain tag to it, like it always happens there, or this opening. Let's have a look at this sample game that shows the type of sacrifice that I'm getting at. It's a game by Middlegame, former world champion. At the time, former world champion. This game is from 1970 and his opponent is Kolarov, a Bulgarian player who represented the Bulgarian team in this European team championships in 1970. So don't really have any big information about him, but if Bulgaria is usually pretty decent at chess, so should have been a pretty good player. Let's see what happened in this game. We have a Kolarov. Black played g6. A setup that is even popular would be a little bit too much, but it is played even today. This combination of c6, d5 with the fianchetto. It's a pretty solid way for black to play. Tal played with knight f3 and h3. This to this day is the main line. The idea behind this h3 move is that black wants to get out his bishop, and this is not so easily possible here. No, g4 no way, but there are no good other squares. So black here has a choice. He can take on e4, he can play knight f6 or knight h6. Those moves are also possible. This move, or for the creative player, knight h6. Black, however, played differently. He just took on e4, which is the main line probably, or the simplest line. White recaptures, knight d7. Now we have a pretty Kolarov type of pawn structure. D and e pawn are exchanged, and white has a good simple development. Bishop c4, the best diagonal for the bishop. Knight f6, and here white just trades. Note that this is definitely more promising than retreating. Very often you should consider to keep pieces on the board if you have more space, which here knight g3 does. You keep more pieces on the board. But here, note that the knight only looks at squares that are controlled by black. So the knight is not doing very much. It's just simpler to trade on f6. Simple and good. Takes, castles. Again, h3 is a useful move. Bishop g4 is not possible. Black castled and the rook e1. Very logical move, putting the rook on this half open e file, maybe putting pressure on e7. Black now went bishop f5. A possible move. Other moves are knight d5 or something like that. Knight e5. Very typical play, putting pressure on f7. Combined pressure of knight and bishop makes it a bit difficult for black to arrange his pieces. Black now, I think, played a somewhat questionable maneuver. He played bishop e4. This loses quite some time, especially if you consider that after bishop g5, played by Tal, now the bishop on e4 is indirectly attacked as white threatens to take here and then take on e4. So it has to move again, bishop d5. This was probably black's concept. He wanted to sort of, with this snake-like maneuver, he wanted to try to neutralize this pressure on the diagonal. So of course, Tal is not obliging. He's not trading. He keeps this important piece on the board and rather asks black, okay, you put your bishop on d5. Is this a stable square? Are you sure? In fact, it's difficult to keep this bishop there. Black went to e6, which is preparing the next move. What he wants to do is he wants to get rid of the e5 knight, but he cannot do it like that, as this is simply losing the e7 pawn. So this bishop e6 move that he played is preparing knight d7. Tal played c3. of course, d4 was hanging. We need to give some protection to that. Black went knight d7, and of course we are not trading, but we retreat to f3. We keep pieces on the board. Black has less space and has problems to free himself. In addition, this knight f3 move also intends the following typical exchange sacrifice. I'm going to spoil it a bit here. White is going to sacrifice on e6. This is the sacrifice that I'm talking about. And to be honest, if you have some experience in those kind of chess middle games, you not really see this as a sacrifice. In fact, I'm going so far to say that after rook e8, which was played by black, the move rook takes d6, now played by Tal, is almost an automatic move. It really, for a good player, sorry, this kind of move should be the first that he considers, and it needs some serious, there need to be very serious reasons in the position why not to sacrifice. The thing is that the benefits are very apparent quickly. If we look at this, black of course has to take the rook, and now white actually has a choice. He has two very promising continuations. One played by Tal, the other also quite promising. Tal played queen e2. Instead, there also was bishop c4. Both moves might even transpose into one another. Here white simply has a strong position as well. He's attacking this pawn, and black has a hard time to even keep it. He can, but only with a passive move. The main difference between bishop c4 and queen e2 is that now the pawn is also pinned. It cannot advance. After queen e2 played in their game, can show this briefly, queen e2, black went e5, returning a pawn. It's not a problem. White is better after that, but this is the difference between bishop c4 and the queen move. After bishop c4, black cannot return. What happens the pawn? If let's say black defends passively after that, knight f8, a possible line. How do we continue? The thing is, this is a purely strategic sacrifice. White is not in a hurry to, let's say, get a mating attack or do something drastic in the next couple of moves. White is just building up based on the fact that simply his minor pieces, and especially this fantastic bishop, this is better than a rook in this position. Look at the e8 rook. Yeah, this is just a piece that's doing nothing. It's looking at its own pawn. And those two pawns, this is a very important point, they sort of split the board. They are absolutely hindering black from coordinating his forces in a useful way. White, given time, might even start a kingside attack, let's say a knight to e5, and then push the h-pawn. Just one plan. So this is a very, very nice compensation for white. Black has no way really to make his rooks felt in the near future, and we have many, many weaknesses that we can play for. Yeah, directly this pawn. But notice we're not taking the pawn. The pressure is much more useful. Let's say a5 to continue this line. a4 takes, queen here, bishop e3. This is a purely strategic sacrifice that gives white a huge compensation in form of this wrecked pawn structure. Black's pieces are totally ineffective. We go back to the game. So this was bishop c4, yeah? Tal played queen e2. The choice between the two is pretty much a matter of taste. Both lead to very strong play. Here, black was able to return the pawn. Okay, so we give the check first. King h8 and d takes e5. So in this position, we have won a pawn in addition, and we still have an excellent compensation. We look at this, queen c7 is definitely the best move. Black needs to connect rooks and put some pressure on e5. Yeah, white now can play bishop f7, rook f8, and e6. This is a very strong maneuver. It, again, comparable to the situation mentioned before when there were two e-pawns for black. Those two pawns cut the board in half. White will gain very serious attacking chances. What he needs to do, white, is to involve his queen in the attack. And we see that this happens quickly. Black plays knight f6. Knight e5 was also a possibility and maybe tougher. Hard to tell. White also has an excellent position here. Something like this. Yeah, is also excellent for white. He still has a great control. The queen influences both wings. And yeah, there's a king attack on the king brewing. And there are ideas like this and so on. And there are many attacking ideas. Maybe still this was tougher. It's hard to tell. Black played knight to f6. And now we see a key maneuver, which was of course found by Tali. It's yeah, at least one of maybe the greatest attacking player of all time. And he knows what to do in this position. What white needs is the queen in the attack. So queen c4, strong. Going here and to h4. And that's exactly the spot where the queen belongs, near the king. Queen a5, rook e1. Yeah, first rook e1, supporting the e file. That's very important. So the thing is, what black maybe wants to do is to make a counter sacrifice here. And with the rook on e1, we look at the e7 pawn. So if black does this counter sacrifice, we immediately look at this weak pawn and are very much ready to take it. So a good prep move. Yeah, what did black do? He played queen d5 and white went to h4. Yeah, here we come to a funny situation. White now has numerous threats. Bishop takes g6 is one threat, and knight e5 is the other main threat, intending knight g6. Yeah, it is really the case black is helpless. Yeah? All pieces are getting transferred near the king, and this attack is simply cannot survive this. And this is especially problematic, keeping away or taking away many important squares for the black king. Yeah, black now played rook takes d7, and now Tar found a nice way to finish this off. He played knight to e5. It's really funny. Yeah, white threatening knight g6 and knight f7. If black now secures the rook, he will, with this check, lose the queen instead. So that's even worse. Yeah, so black played rook f8, didn't play rook f8, sorry. He played, after knight e5, he played knight h5. Yeah, just allowing this. Well, it's not great, you know, but the alternative. So white now is just 2 pawns up and still has a fantastic attack. Yeah, black played rook e8, knight d6, bishop f6. Yeah, black is just about holding on. Around here there are various ways to win. Tal is going for one that is pretty reliable. Here we see a position where white has this strong pin still going. He has a pawn, an extra pawn on the king side, and he's got the better minor piece. Queen b3. Yeah, here black played king f8. Yeah, that's not exactly the toughest defense, but it seems that from a technical point of view, queen d5 is the toughest, but after that white can just trade and get to a winning endgame. However, this is the continuation that would have prolonged the game quite considerably. Yeah, black played king f8, but this is now very easy. Rook d1, queen move, and now bishop h6. Yeah, this is deadly now. There's rook d8 in the mix, queen b7 in the mix. After rook d6, black resigned. After just queen takes here and queen b7, white is winning with this strong threat against g7. He will trade off all pieces and then win with 2 extra pawns in the king and pawn endgame. Yeah, what is the lesson to be learned from this game? in this type of structure, if we go all the way back here, it is a very, very common idea to sacrifice the exchange in this kind of situation. This, of course, as mentioned, is not specific to this particular opening. There are many openings and possible setups where this can happen. The characteristics is that very often, not all the time, but very often, it is a bishop that is taken to weaken the color complex of the bishop that is taken. Like here, the light squares. We saw that the light squares were key, especially this strong diagonal, where a piece is coming, or this later the queen to c4, all on the light squares. And another characteristic is that this pawn, this double pawn, it hinders the coordination of the defending side. Just to show that it happens from all kinds of openings, I can show you a totally different opening where the exchange sacrifice might happen. Just a moment. Yeah, back to the starting position. I can put up something that, if you follow my blitz games, you know well. I play the Bogo Indian often due to my book project, and here this is the line that I have chosen as black. And here in this opening, you sometimes get something like that. Just putting up some possible moves. This was actually imprecise. Something like that, let's say. B3. It's not a forced thing here. I just want to show the general idea. And here in this kind of structure, it is very, very interesting for black to sacrifice the exchange. Yeah, and this is quite comparable to the situation in the Tal game. Of course, here it is not as favorable, as black is not having this kind of space advantage that in the Tal game was adding to his assets. But still, this is a very interesting way to play, with the queen maybe putting pressure here, knight g4 coming. The dark squares are very much weakened. This especially gains in strength if the h-pawn is moved. I recently had a blitz game where h3 was even played, and then the complex here of weak squares this was enormous. So this can happen in all kinds of positions and really should be considered. Very often the position is rather close, so the rooks cannot do that much, and you have good play on those weakened squares. Of course, there should be some sort of support of this these considerations with concrete lines. It's good to check if you can keep those structural advantages, of there's some way for the defending side to get out of it. But very important is to sometimes just give it a try. Try to play this and see how you handle the situation with the uneven material. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. It's a very important motif that happens quite often. If you have the chance, go for it. Thanks for watching.